I wanna be the very best.
Oh, come on! Hi everyone, I'm Luke Hector and this is The Broken Meeple, a show where I devote my time to raving and ranting about board games, but usually more the latter part. We're looking at the second of the two bad comic games I've been given to review. Thank you very much for those copies. First one was Life of the Amazonia. Hopefully you've checked out that review, and that was a bit more of an obscure one because I don't think it's had a lot of retail distribution since it came out on Kickstarter. Well, I'm not aware if this one has either, but this is the most recent Kickstarter that they've done, Wondrous Creatures. 2024, I believe it started fulfilling, and I've started to see it pop up occasionally at conventions. Certainly the last two HandyCon events I've been to, including the one last weekend actually, I've seen other people bring this game out other than myself. So it's definitely had a bit of buzz around, and people are, you know, giving it good reviews, people are giving it good feedback, and so I was keen to see whether this was kind of like, you know, kind of like the second go from the publisher, because I did like Life of the Amazonia. I gave it a good review, but it had some issues, mainly with its Kickstarter process, its you know, component quality and that, and there was one or two aspects of it that kind of soured it to stop it being a distinction level game and instead being one that I would endorse. So this one, I wondered if they've learned from experience, learned from mistakes or anything like that, or is it going to be repeating the same mistakes? Who knows? But we've dug into it, both multiplayer and solo, and with the mini expansions as well. So here's my full review of this one, because let's face it, speed review ain't gonna cut it.
Get on with it.
Wondrous Creatures at its heart is a worker placement game mixed with a tableau builder. You are trying to meet the goals of these various achievements that will score you points for having so many cards of particular types of creatures, for having so many habitat icons, different types of cards, so many eggs, that kind of thing. These will be the bulk of your score. But of course you are playing creatures, which by themselves will be worth points, but they will have all sorts of different special abilities and powers, be they instant, continuous, but they also may have end of game scoring for you to focus on as well. There's quite a few ways that you can score points from just those cards. Players take control of a player board along with a pilot. So this pilot will have, you know, a special ability that you can unlock at some point soon into the game. And it will come with 3 very nice, cute screen printed meeples of whatever fuzzy creature it happens to be. And the pilot will magnetize to the top of one of them, which is pretty cool, I gotta say. And the idea is that you have one action on your turn and a couple of free actions. So on your turn, you can place somebody out on this map. The map will be littered with these egg tokens, which essentially are, you know, different species icons that you can grab, but by having eggs, you store them on your board and you get, you know, different abilities and points. We'll put the pilot aside there for a minute because he's not going to stay in there. But when you place your meeple out, it covers up 2 hexes rather than 1 in a standard game. And what you do is then you cater for the abilities of all the adjacent hexes. Now, some of them don't do anything like basic spaces you land on, but the habitat spaces, that you may have little abilities that you can trigger with the use of these spendable fishing net tokens, but mainly they'll grant you resources that you'll track on your board: fruit, flowers, mushrooms, and coral.
Everything the buddy needs.
Once you've got the resources you need, you can then play the cards out in front of you. They will have a different resource cost, and there's 5 different types. You've got instant, continuous ability, endgame scoring, energy, which is where you basically put an energy token on the card, and it will have an ability on it, and you basically, as a free action, spend the energy token and trigger it, but then you gotta recharge it up if you want to use it multiple times. And then there's also the recharge abilities, which essentially have like a yellow hourglass, and at the turn, when you decide I want to recall my workers, all these abilities will key off in your zone. And then on top of that, you're allowed to then claim one of these achievements, which are pretty straightforward. As I said, you know, this one wants you to have 7, 5, or 3 crustacean icons, get it right. You know, this one wants you to have a mix of 4, 6, or 8 fish and insect icons. And the idea is that if you meet the criteria, you can claim it, but you can only do each one once. So do you go low, do you go high? That's entirely your choice. And as you go through the game and do recharges, a tracker will move along the time track, and this basically populates the board with some more hexes and more eggs and such. But eventually, players are going to be claiming these gold trophies for meeting the criteria of the achievements. Now, there are aspects in the game that will suck these up as well, but primarily it will be the achievements. And the game just carries on, rinse, repeat, with each player taking one of those 4 actions. So worker placement, play cards, your achievement grab, or recharging with your workers, until eventually all of these trophies run out. As soon as that happens, everybody gets another turn, and you total up all the points from all the various scoring avenues that you've tried, and have a guess with the one with the most.
A cookie!
No, it's not a cookie!
Not the cookie.
Not a lot to go over in that overview, was there? And, well, that's the pro of the game. Even though there's, a few different mechanics at work and there's all the abilities on the cards, the initial overhead is not that complex at all. The rulebook, I also have to give credit for, is written pretty well, actually. The last one for Amazonia was a decent rulebook as well. This one I think is even better. There's very few occasions where you'll trip up over a rule in here, and you've even got references for all the different card abilities at the back, so you should be able to cater for yourself without needing a horrible FAQ moment. But the rules themselves are straightforward. You've got a reference aid that tells you the highlights of what it is you get to do, as well as the endgame scoring, but some of those actions you're only going to do every now and again. Complete an achievement. You'll do it a few times in the game, and well, what do? Meet the criteria, put a marker on it, get a bonus. Well, that was hard. Recharge, take all your workers back. You got any recharge abilities? Then key them all off. Simple. Play cards, pay the resources, play the cards. Worker placement, put the guy down, trigger some habitat icons and get resources or cards. They're very straightforward rules. In that the initial teach is actually quite quick, but this isn't like a really light, simple game with no thinking required. Oh god, no, you have got a lot of these cards that are all unique with different effects on them. Now, some of the effects will rinse repeat. I mean, if there's one that scores you for, crustacean icons, there's going to be one that scores you for birds and fish and mammals and such. But, there's a lot of different variations in these. And so when you play a game, you'll go through a lot of these cards, but you're going to see a decent variety in the mix. Now, that does come with a little caveat we'll get onto a bit later, but yeah, for a game that is, full of different ability cards, I was surprised by how easy it is for me to teach this, even at conventions. Especially if they have played tableau builders and, worker placement games before. But Wingspan, Earth, if that's your kind of jam, then you're going to get into this with ease. It really didn't take me long to go through it.
Nerd alert!
Now, of course, we got to talk about the components and the artwork. I mean, the artwork, just like with Amazonia, it's gorgeous here as well. I mean, it is a nice, colourful board, but really, the main artwork is the box cover, which is certainly pretty striking when you look at it, but it's altered down with these cards, and these cards are gorgeous. There's a lot of really cool, nice, colourful pictures here, all of them unique. There are no repeats, and basically, somebody here has a bit of a Pokemon or Power World fetish here, and just had a field day coming up with all these weird creatures. Some of them I can't even pronounce their names, they're so weird. But it basically is like a rip-off of Power and Pokemon, because it's just all sorts of weird things. I mean, you almost want to chuck a ball at the game or something and try and capture one of them. They're so similar. But, it's like, it's its style of game. It's called Wondrous Creatures, so of course there's got to be Wondrous Creatures.
We're not so different, you and I.
Now, when I did the Amazonia review, I did make a bit of a hoo-ha about the component quality. You can upgrade the components in this as well. There is an expansion for it. But in the previous game, I said that you kind of needed to, because the components in the original retail copy weren't that good. They were very flimsy cardboard, and there were some issues I had. Those issues are not present in this game. So let's talk about the retail version of it so far. You will still get the cards, which have some really good card stock. I mean, these are very sturdy. I can give them a flick like this, and they do not bend at all or wear. You'll notice I haven't sleeved the game. Well, partially that's because it is a bit of a Tetris to store it in the box after a while, but honestly, I don't think you need to sleeve the cards. As long as you haven't got that jerk who bends your cards in half when they play every game, and trust me, I know one or two of those people.
You're going to burn in a very special level of hell.
But if somebody's just playing the game as normal, these cards are going to last you a long time before you need to worry about wear. That I don't think you need to sleeve them. You can do the standard size, and I probably will sleeve them at some point, but honestly, you don't need to. If you're not a sleever, then don't feel that you're going to get caught out with horrible cards. But everything else in the game is pretty decent. I mean, you have got wooden pieces for your markers and achievement markers. You've got the meeples, screen-printed meeples for your little mammals and the pilot itself. I love the fact that these pilots magnetize onto the back. I mean, everybody goes nuts for this. And yeah, it's a little bit of a gimmick, but when you've got games that normally have you sort of squeeze it on and it might pop off or it might get really stuck or something, the fact that you can just literally just go like that and it's on, and now I can't shake him off. The power of tiny little magnets. They work. It's cool, it's a gimmick, but it certainly looks the part on the board when you've got all these meeples all over the place. Now, your player boards, dual layer as well, so great. Dual layer is, I think, a mandatory requirement in every board game these days, and these very nice. Haven't seen any warping issues particularly, and if they are, they're very minor. But yeah, these are very nice, very colourful too. And even the tokens that can be upgraded, they're all pretty good as well. I have to reach over here just to grab them for you, but you'll notice on the board I have got some of the deluxe tokens out here, and these are basically all wooden pieces. But the retail copy is still fine. I mean, you've got, you know, cardboard cutouts for the energy tokens and the fishing nets and the trophies. Now in the deluxe version you get, you know, metal trophies, as if I care about metal trophies. You get cardboard ones, you get wooden ones, you've got cardboard, you know, fishing nets, you've got, you know, fairly good thick screen printed wooden pieces, but you only use these so often, so it's not like you really need to care if these ones are upgraded. Really, the biggest upgrade is probably the egg tokens. Now, you know, all of this comes in the same box. You don't have to buy 2 separate boxes, but the egg tokens are fine. They've got the same artwork, and they're not as flimsy cardboard as previously. I mean, they're not like massively thick either, but they're sturdy enough. You know, you're going to have to put these in a bag in order to actually, you know, pull them out, you know, some of them. And I don't think these are going to wear down. You know, these are definitely light years better than the previous fare. But if you do want to upgrade the game, then man, these eggs are lovely. I mean, they are, you know, they are nice, sturdy little pieces with beautiful, you know, colors and pictures on them or something. These eggs just feel nice and joyous in the hand. So yes, the upgrade pieces will be more costly to the game. It won't, you know, it will affect the value for you. But you don't need to. If you just have the retail copy of this game, it's going to look gorgeous. It's still going to be pretty well, you know, put together in terms of components. You'll just have to have cardboard components for some of these, and honestly, it's not that big a deal.
It is just that the luxury edition has so much more eagle.
The meat of Wondrous Creatures is all down to these cards, and you have got quite a lot of them. I mean, this is a fairly sizable deck of cards, each one being unique, and yes, you're going to have some similarities with abilities, but they are still all unique. And this is where the heart of the game is, because this worker placement aspect is nice. It's a cool little like twist on the genre of having you take up 2 hexes and look at the stuff around it, and that's all well and good. It evolves as the game goes on, but not to a massive extent. And you know, players are going to be blocking each other. I mean, this is the 3 to 4 player map. The reverse of the board has a 2 player map, which is a bit smaller, and it does the job fine. You know, the worker placement aspect is fun, but nothing, you know, out of this world. It's really down to these cards, and if you're like me and like tableau builders with janky combos and crazy turns, then this is the one for you, because you know, you might have a card that is a quick little instant ability to activate an icon on the board, and that's fine. You played it because you wanted to get, you know, an insect icon in your tableau, for example. You're in your reserve. But then you can set yourself up for some crazy turns where some of these instants can give you like 10 to 15 victory points if you, like, you know, oh, this will give me, you know, 2 VP if I hatch a ton of eggs. Well, you know, for each hatched egg, well, great. I'm going to make certain I got a bunch of unhatched eggs for a bit, and then play this card and then set myself up for a bunch of points. There's a lot of little ways that you can have cool combos going, and it's not just simply, oh, I play this and get a bunch of points. It's also getting resources, getting cards, allowing you to discard cards. I mean, you can get cards that let you get points for discarding cards, drawing cards, collecting eggs, having recharge card abilities go off in general. I know a friend of mine did that in the previous game where he had a bunch of recharge cards. He got points at the end of the game for them, but he also got points every time they triggered, so he wanted to rest as often as he could. It accelerated the game as a result. So there's lots of different ways that you can have fun with these cards, and you do see a lot of them. I mean, you'll go through a lot of the deck just in general, and that's not to say, oh yeah, I've seen everything. No, you'll go through a lot of the deck. You won't necessarily get all the cards yourself, but you'll have a pretty sizable tableau in front of you of something like, you know, anywhere between like 12 to 20 cards by the time the game is over. So there's a lot of these that you're going to be triggering, on top of getting the eggs for the bonuses, on top of doing the achievements, unlocking abilities off your board and your captain ability. So, you know, the captain abilities are fine, but you're only going to use them a few times in the game, and it may take you a little bit of time to unlock them. So they're cool, but they're not the be-all or end-all. You know, some of them are not the best on balance either, but you're only going to trigger these so often, so it's not like, oh, I've unlocked this, now I get to spam this every turn. No, only your captain person has it, so you've got to put all 3 of your workers out and take them back, and then put the captain out again. So it does take a little while before you get to trigger these, but, you know, say, they're a nice addition for a bit of variety.
Oh, it sounds dreamy.
I like the fact there's a good variety of these cards as well. You know, you've got the instant abilities, you've got the endgame scoring, you've got the energy ones, you've got the recharge ones, you've got the, you know, the continuous ability ones, and certainly they're not skewed equally. There are certainly more instants than there are of some of the others, but you will create a very varied tableau in front of you, or you might just have a situation where you have grabbed a bunch of the same thing. I mean, there are cards in there that reward you for playing instant cards, so great, you know, find a bunch of those. But, you know, one of the achievements wants you to have a mix, so you could do. But then if you've got a bunch of those recharge abilities keying off, then every time you rest, you're going to get all sorts of cool bonuses. You'll have like one turn that feels, that was a kind of a basic turn, and I'm just building up, getting a few resources. But then suddenly you make that killer turn. It gets you all sorts of cool stuff because you've set everything up. And, you know, a lot of this game does involve a little bit of setup. You know, you're not going to be doing something amazing every single turn. You'll build up to the next big thing. It's like a lot of short-term goals. You know, right, I have played these cards, they got me all these really cool things. Right, okay, but I am a little short on resources now. Right, I better use some workers and go on the board here and get some resources. Right, now I'm ready to play the next few cards and do some really cool thing like that. So, you know, you've always got something to work up to, and, you know, a good fulfilling reward once you get there. Even the little fishing net abilities are a nice little addition, because on top of like doing all the stuff on the cards, some of these habitats, as well as like some tiles that you can put out, have got other little abilities, like being able to sweep the market, draw cards, gain more resources, and the fishing nets are essentially a spendable resource that when you get them every now and again, you can spend them if you have put your worker next door to them and trigger some other effects. So there's a lot of different ways that you can just trigger a cool ability here, or work out a little combo here, or, you know, get some reward for what you're doing. It's not often that you'll have turns that feel like, that wasn't really much. No, I didn't feel I got anything there. You might do at the start, like, oh, I went somewhere and I only got 2 resources, but then eventually you'll easily be able to get 3, maybe even 4, maybe 3 plus some cool effect, you know. And I like the fact that you've got choices over the cards or the resources, because most games have you just draw blind from a deck, or, you know, every now and again you get to recruit a card. Well, here you have to make the choice between the resources or the cards, depending on what's in what they call the wilderness. So yeah, I could get 3 fruit, or 2 fruit and 1 card, or, you know, 3 cards if there happens to be nothing but fruit habitat icons out there. And so I like that element of choice. It's not just simply, you know, drawing blind. And thankfully, this game doesn't allow you to draw blind except for the occasional instant card ability. So luck of the draw will have a play in the matter, because, you know, if you're searching for specific faction icons or type of cards, then there's 6 in the display. You're going to go through the deck quite frequently, but you may not necessarily see exactly what you want. But because the cards are there, the display will refresh quite frequently, and you have more control over getting the cards. You know, you don't go, right, I'm going to draw 5 cards and hope I get the icon I want. No, if the icon you want is there, it's probably out there. You've just got to go and get it.
We're just so busy.
Well, make time.
Now, in terms of flaws, there's one main flaw we'll get onto in a minute, but very briefly, there was like a couple of little niggles here and there. Firstly, the score track only goes up to 50, but it's pretty easy to break 100 in this game. They give you tokens that you put your little marker on so that you know if it's 50 or 100, although your marker covers a number, so it's a little bit hard. But you do find that you only score so many points during the game, and then it really comes down to what you got on those endgame cards and the achievements. That's the bulk of your score. So at least you can see some idea of how well people are doing, but I do wish that maybe, you know, you can get some strategies that might score a lot of points as the game goes on, but only so many. And you can get trophies at the end of the score track here in order to, you know, if you've scored enough points, but frequently you find that players only score so many points, then suddenly it's like, you know, like looping the board continuously with the end game. You know, if you're going to have that, then you might as well have had the point track go all the way around the board and end in 100. Yeah, it would have made the board slightly bigger, and there's already a little bit of table space necessity here because of all the cards you've got. But yeah, just having to constantly loop back with 50 is a little bit of a niggle problem. But okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that is the one thing from the last Kickstarter that they did not learn from. They certainly improved on the component quality, yes, big tick there. But the big problem that Amazonia had was that it was pretty much a multiplayer solitaire game, and it was way too long. Well, here, it's actually not that multiplayer solitaire game. I mean, your cards aren't going to affect other players particularly, but you are racing for the achievements, and you are, you know, still getting in each other's way on the board worker placement style. Although that is kind of the main interaction that you have. So there's more interaction than there was in Amazonia, but not zounds more. But the bit they didn't learn from, the time length. If you look at the back of the box, it likes to claim 1 to 4 players, 14 plus, 40 to 80 minutes.
Yeah, in your bra.
Hell no! No way! 40 to 80 minutes? Who the hell are you frigging kidding on this one? It's impossible. I don't think it's physically possible to play this game in 40 to 80 minutes with a 1 to 4 player count. Your 4-player game is going to be minimum 90, and I mean you are hyperspeed players and know exactly what you're doing. Chances are your 4-player game there will easily hit 2 hours plus. 3 players easily 90, possibly even 2 hours for that one or something. And 1 player, I have played this solo, trust me, I cannot get it done in 40 minutes if I want to think about my turn. And obviously this doesn't include setup or teach in any way, shape or form. I don't know what it is with this publisher that doesn't seem to understand the concept of game length.
But your weak link is, this is Earth.
You know, there's just simply too many trophies out there. That's the game timer, and it takes a while before your time track for recharging, you know, starts to filter those out. So by the time you've got like 15, 20 cards in front of you, you're kind of like, yeah, I feel this is kind of win more now. Why are we still going? The game should have ended by now. And it's still like got 2 or 3 trophies to go. And it's a snowball effect. So you start off not getting very many trophies out, and then all of a sudden they start sort of powering off. But even then, it takes a while before the game ends. This is easily something like a 90-minute to 2-hour game plus. And to be honest, it's mainly a 90 to 2-hour game because I've house ruled it.
You can't do that! You can't do that!
Yes, and I'm not the only critic to do so. I know it sounds like a broken record, me going on about game length, but I am not the only critic who's talked about the game length problem here. It really is a problem, but thankfully, it's easily fixed. Just remove some trophies. That's all you gotta do. It doesn't break the game, it doesn't make some strategies worse or better, and a universal rule that I say is, you know, when you've got so many trophies out here based on player count, remove 2. Always. Remove 2 trophies, and you should be good. And I think that keeps the length to a better length for all the player counts, 2, 3, and 4. Maybe with 4 you might want to even remove 1 extra trophy, but chances are I think 2 is enough, and the length is for the most part fixed. Can you get it down to 40 to 80 minutes? Probably hell no for a 1 to 4 player count, but at least you can get it to a level that is a lot more manageable. But seriously, Bad Comet, I don't know who the hell you play games with, but people don't play these games at rocket speed.
Ludicrous speed. Sir, we've never gone that fast before. I don't know if the ship can take us.
And one of the reasons, besides the trophies, that the game can take a little bit longer is because this game has the potential to generate a decent amount of analysis paralysis, or AP as we like to call it. That is the term we use as gamers where people freeze up when they've got too many options to consider. And, well, when you have a tableau builder where you've got 6 cards on display as well as 4 in your hand to begin the game with, and God knows how many more cards you end up with, that all have unique costs, abilities, and icons, some people are going to freeze up on that. There's a decent amount to check out on these cards. Now, there's not a huge amount of text to read, and the icons are the same as the text, so the text just basically explains what the icon does. The problem is, the icons are big and easy to read. The text varies depending on the ability. If the ability is literally just discard 1 card, get an egg, well, that's easy to read. But if your ability is, if this card costs 3 resources or less, needs to be discarded, discard 1 energy above to play that card for free instead, it's easy to tell what the ability does, and if you're used to the icons you'll be fine, but that text is really minute, and at the end of the table you ain't going to be able to read it for love nor money. And the problem is, when you have a game with this many cards out on display, people who don't deal with these tableau card games are going to spend forever reading these cards. They're going to have to check out all the new abilities that come out. People are going to stop what they're doing, and you might think, well, hang on, why don't you do that on your turn? Well, the display changes so frequently that you can't avoid having to read these new cards. Now, someone like me is used to playing a lot of these tableau games with icons everywhere. I'm used to being able to see the card and kind of instantly know what it does, or quickly absorb what it does, but I'm used to these games. Somebody who isn't is going to freeze up, take a while to read, and there are some people who are really AP with this kind of thing that really ought to be banned from playing this game, because while they're spending, God knows how long of the game trying to read all these cards, you're there considering choking yourself to death with a bag of eggs.
That escalated quickly.
The length is still a problem, and I wish they'd learned from the previous game that you know, you need to have some way of dealing with that. That being said, when you get players who know what they're doing and can deal with these types of card games, the game will still go at a decent pace. It's just have that AP warning in mind. So now I want to talk about the solo mode and these expansions. So first we're just going to talk briefly about these another 2 expansions here. The other one was the upgraded components. I've already talked about those. We've got the crew set and the gargantuan beast. Now the crew set is kind of meh in my opinion. This one basically just adds some different creature models, which are cool. You can interchange and have something different, but the main reason they're there is because you've got these crew cards, which basically, to kind of summarize it, basically just give you some other once per game ability that you have that other players don't. And that's kind of it, really. I mean, some of the abilities are once per game that you use at some point on your turn, and some of them are a difference in setup. And that's kind of it. That's it. I mean, yes, it's unique and it may be a cool, powerful effect at times, but that's literally all this is. This kind of just feels like a meh expansion. Like, it doesn't really add much apart from just some cute little meeples. But the crew cards, it's just an extra complication you don't need, and it doesn't really add that much. So this one I almost pretty much never use. I don't think it's worth it at all, unless you just want to have a lot of these different, you know, really cool crew mounts for your pilots to ride. But yeah, this one I just thought, meh, it's not that great. Gargantuan Beast is nice, but this is definitely one for when you're familiar with the game. I don't recommend teaching the game with it. Essentially, you get a few extra cards for the deck that have a specific ability relating to beasts. You have these beast cards that, you know, are dormant and then awaken. So you get a new action, which is to grab a beast. You need 4 eggs, you hatch them, and I like the fact that it's a new way to unlock your captain ability, because normally you have to get an achievement marker, which means you have to go crap on some objective in order to get it. Well, this time you can buy a beast, and then that also unlocks your captain ability, possibly even quicker. So I quite like that that's a new feature. But what you basically get is a beast card, which this is just an example of a card, that you put down and it has a tracker on it. And when you play cards subsequently of particular species icons, the tracker moves up, and once it gets to the end, it flips over, and it has some cool combination of a special ability as well as an endgame scoring.
Big monster!
So these beast cards are fine. It's a new addition to the game. It's cool if you've played the game and are familiar with the mechanics, but I don't recommend you teach it with it, because you've got enough cards with special abilities and the worker placement and all the achievements for new players to get into it. This isn't going to suddenly make the game like amazing. It's not gonna like take it for like to the next level. It's just a cool new addition that you can throw in, and it's nice and it's thematic with the way the game plays. So it's fine if you want it. Adds a bit of variety and a new mechanic that works. This is definitely the preferable one from this in the crew set, but as I say, it's not essential by any means. It's just a nice little addition. So the solo mode, briefly to go into that, you essentially have what's called the Wild Tingent Bot, which can be used as a normal player character. It's kind of weird how they sort of combine the two, really. You play it on a certain difficulty rating, and this one's the, like, sort of, I think, the 3rd hardest here. And basically it's got a little tracker on it. You put these little cog tokens out on the objective markers. You play it as if it was a 2-player game. And essentially it's a very straightforward system. Basically the AI bot has a deck of cards, and it's got 2 different sides to it. You know, the beige side and the sort of golden side. And basically as you turn a card over, it will do an action. It will go to a spot on the board, and there's little criteria for how it moves, which is a little extensive, but the rules are fairly straightforward. It doesn't take too long to work it out. It's just, you got to get used to a couple of tiebreakers every now and again, particularly with its positioning on the hexes. But once you get the hang of it, it's not too bad. It's definitely a little bit more fiddly than the multiplayer aspect, though. But the idea is that when they've got these little cog symbols on them with a little key on it, you have to move the marker across here, and certain things will happen, like it will try to claim achievements and such, and it will populate the board with more hexes. But eventually it will get to the next color, and so the abilities basically become that little bit more powerful. And the idea is that you carry on until all the trophies have run out, just like a normal game. The AI will score points as it goes through, and it has some criteria for endgame scoring, and then you have to try and beat it. And the harder the difficulty, the more quickly it gets achievements, the more, you know, more points it gains for endgame cards. It's kind of an equal mix of cheaty and beat your own score in a sense, because yes, it does some things in the game that it normally wouldn't be able to do as a player, but that's mainly just so that you don't have to juggle around resources. It doesn't use nets, it doesn't collect eggs apart from just for, you know, points at the end of the game, and it doesn't do anything finicky. So it's quite an easy AI to pilot once you get the hang of those rules, as I mentioned, with the little tiebreakers. But when all's said and done, it's basically a case of, right, it's going to do stuff, it's going to get in your way, and eventually it will end up with a point score, and you need to have done better than it. It can be, you know, quite tough on those harder difficulties though. I mean, you've got 4 main difficulties in the box. The first one you should be able to, like, you know, cakewalk it without even a second thought. The second one is probably the one you should do first, and, you know, if you play your cards right and get a good combo, you'll do pretty well, but you might find it can still beat you at it. It's not the easiest bot in the world, even at that difficulty. When you go up to the second hardest, and particularly the hardest, it seems almost downright unfair on the top difficulty. But if you play the 2 ones in the middle, I think you can have a good mix between some wins, some losses, and a reasonable challenge. The main thing though is that you get to do all the cool stuff in the game with the cards, because this for you does not change. You play the game as per normal, so if you're worried that the game takes too long with 3 to 4 players, but you just want to have some fun, like, you know, doing all these cool shenanigans with cards, like, oh, hang on, if I play this, I get these resources, and then I can play these 2 cards, which lets me trigger this or something, then you're going to get that in spades, and you'll get it in a much shorter time. Not 40 minutes!
Wibbly wobbly, timey wimey.
So the solo mode is actually pretty decent, and I said the same thing with Amazonia. I think the solo mode in both games works quite well, especially if you think that the game is too long with multiplayer. But, you know, you just got to get used to a few extra rules with the solo mode. That's all there is, and there's not that much. I mean, there's, what, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4... 4. That's it. Yeah, there's 4 pages worth of solo rules, and mainly it's just these 2 pages that have those little, like, huh? How does that work with the tiebreaker? It's like the crew placement rules, as they call it, and the achievement marker placement rules. They're a little bit finicky at first, but once you get the hang of it, you're fine. So when all said and done, there's not a huge amount to, you know, say as flaws of the game. The main one is the AP factor coupled with the problems with its length, and the fact that it could have been maybe a little bit more interactive. You know, it's still solitaire-ish, but not as bad as Amazonia. But you can fix that length issue by just taking out a couple of trophies, and yes, I can't forgive the game for that, but at least it's fixable, at least you can deal with it. And the AP factor is just, you know, be conscious of who you're playing the game with. If they struggle with the likes of Earth and Wingspan, then they're going to struggle like hell with this one, I can tell you that. You don't get through as many cards as Earth, but the abilities are certainly more interesting, and it's definitely a step up above Wingspan in complexity. You know, this is like kind of in the lower end of mid-weight, so you got to be a little bit notable of that. But yeah, I got no qualms about giving this one a 9 out of 10. This one earns the distinction rating. You know, it drops a mark for the flaw that I mentioned, but otherwise, components great. Even if you don't buy the upgraded components, the components are still great. The artwork is great. The rules are easy to learn. They're easy to teach. You know, there's, you know, good amount of pictorial representation in there, reference card, you know, all the janky abilities. You know, if only maybe there could have been a bit more variety with these achievements, but you know, you can only do so much with these, and you have to arrange them in such a way that you don't duplicate, so you don't have one faction being ultimately more powerful than others, which is a nice little touch. And the solo mode to boot, which is still pretty cool and allows you to just have fun with the cards with a relatively easy to pilot solo mode. It's got a lot going for it, and it deserves a distinction rating for me. This one's definitely a keeper in the collection. It will sit alongside Wingspan and Earth and all the other tableau card builders I seem to accumulate. It does seem to be something that I like. Cards that are all unique with cool abilities that I get to try some different strategy with each game. If you're into that kind of thing, Wondrous Creatures is a must grab.
Oh, come on!
So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please thumb it up on YouTube and thumb it up on Board Game Geek when it goes live on the website. You know, there are 2 sites where I show off my videos, and it would be good to get some attention on both. Don't forget to check out the Amazonia review I did live for the Amazonia. By all means, you can compare the thoughts I had on both. You know, they're from the same publisher, and again, thank you for the review copies, but you know me, I talk honestly about my opinions, and so, you know, I can't stress enough that even though I get review copies, I'm still giving my honest thoughts here. Let me know your thoughts down below about the game itself. Have you played it? Do you like it? Do you have pros with it? Do you have cons with it that I haven't mentioned? By all means, let us know. Any particular cards you like? Any particular pilot you like? You know, does the length cause a problem for you? Do you have a different way of dealing with the length other than taking out trophies? It'd be interesting to find out more. So until next time, remember, regardless of whether you're brushing the thin lines a little bit closely for a Power World or Pokemon lawsuit, it's still only a game, so take care and bye for now.